Let me ask you something. How many more nights are you going to waste rereading messages from someone who stopped choosing you a long time ago? How many more mornings are you going to wake up with that pit in your stomach, hoping maybe today he'll realize what he lost? We've all been there, waiting for the apology, the explanation, the moment he wakes up and finally gets it. But here's the hard truth. The moment you start waiting for someone to regret losing you, you've already given them too much power. This talk isn't about bitterness. It's not about playing games or faking confidence. It's about transformation. It's about stepping so fully into your value that the only thing he's left with is the memory of who you used to be and the regret that he ever let you go. Today, I'm going to show you how to erase him, not to get revenge, but to rewrite your story. And if he ends up regretting it, that's just a bonus. When we talk about erasing someone, especially someone who meant a lot to us, it can sound cold or even cruel. But erasing him isn't about being heartless. It's about self-preservation. It's about reclaiming the space in your life, your mind, and your emotions that he no longer deserves to occupy. When a relationship ends, especially one where you felt unseen, unappreciated, or disrespected, the instinct for many people is to cling. You go searching for answers. You replay conversations. You look for signs that maybe he cared more than he showed. You might even reach out, hoping for a scrap of closure to validate that what you felt was real. But every time you do that, you're giving him one more piece of your power. What you don't realize is that you're not healing, you're just feeding the illusion that something still exists. The longer you entertain his memory, the longer you stay stuck in a version of yourself that was waiting for someone to choose you. And here's the truth. The people who value you won't need reminders. They won't need to lose you to realize what they had. And the ones who did need to lose you, they were never the ones meant to keep you. So erasing him isn't about pretending nothing ever happened. It's not about rewriting the past. It's about deciding that the chapter is closed and that you are no longer going to live inside a story that isn't moving forward. It's about reclaiming the narrative, because the longer you allow him to live in your head rent-free, the more disconnected you become from your own power. The same power you had before him, the one that will still be there after him. There's this idea that closure comes from the other person, but often they either won't give it or won't give it in the way you need. They might say sorry, but it won't erase the feeling of being treated as an afterthought. They might say they cared, but it won't explain why they didn't act like it. So instead of waiting for something that may never come, give it to yourself. Decide that closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision to no longer chase clarity from someone who thrived in your confusion. And part of that decision means setting boundaries that are more than just physical. It's not just about blocking him on your phone. It's about blocking him in your mind. That means not stalking his socials, not asking friends if they've heard about him, not holding space in your heart for someone who already left. Every time you go back to look at his profile or reread an old message, you're giving your brain a hit of nostalgia it doesn't need. You're not healing, you're relapsing, and the more you relapse, the harder it becomes to remember why you left in the first place. You need to create an emotional clean break. That means when the memory comes, you don't invite it in for coffee. You acknowledge it, thank it for what it taught you, and then let it pass. You don't owe your past constant attention. You owe your future your full commitment. And the person you're becoming. She doesn't have time to keep looking back. She's too busy building a life so rich, so full, and so deeply aligned with her worth that the idea of ever waiting for someone like him again feels almost laughable. That's what it means to erase him, not to forget he ever existed, but to remember that you do. Silence is one of the most underrated tools you have when it comes to walking away from someone who took you for granted. We live in a world that constantly tells us to explain ourselves, to speak up, to make sure we're understood. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say absolutely nothing. When you go quiet, especially with someone who's used to your attention, it creates a vacuum they can't ignore. They notice the difference even if they don't admit it. They feel the absence even if they pretend they don't care. The truth is, your reactions used to feed them. Every time you argued, explained, justified your feelings, or reached out hoping for validation, you were giving them something. Attention, control, relevance, even your anger gave them a sense of importance. They knew they could push your buttons and still have access to your heart. But when you stop reacting, when you cut off the emotional supply, that's when the real shift happens. That's when they start wondering, not because you're playing a game, but because you've genuinely disconnected. Silence says what words never could. It says, I no longer need anything from you. It says, I've moved from trying to be understood to choosing to be at peace. It doesn't scream or beg. It doesn't accuse. It simply withdraws, and in doing so, it flips the dynamic. The person who once had the upper hand no longer has anything to grip onto. And that's when regret starts to creep in. Not because you tried to make them feel it, but because your absence starts highlighting everything your presence once gave them. A lot of people confuse silence with passive aggression, but this kind of silence isn't about manipulation. It's about boundaries. It's about no longer entertaining energy that drains you. When someone consistently undervalues your presence, you teach them nothing by staying vocal. You teach them everything by walking away without needing to announce it. Think about it. How many times have you tried to explain your worth to someone who was committed to misunderstanding it? How often have you poured out your feelings, hoping they'd finally get it, only to feel more invisible in the end? Silence ends that cycle. It forces you to sit with yourself instead of waiting for them to come around. It gives you space to heal without interruption. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first. You'll be tempted to break it just to see if they still care. But that temptation is a test not of their loyalty, but of your growth, because the silence isn't for them. It's for you. It's the space where clarity comes, where strength builds, where you realize that the person you were becoming was always just buried under all the noise. And if they start to miss you, if they reach out, trying to pull you back in with breadcrumbs of attention, that's not a sign to respond. That's a sign your silence is working, that it's speaking to parts of them that your words never could. But don't break it to satisfy their curiosity. Don't reply just to feel seen again. If your worth was only recognized in your absence, it was never truly seen in your presence. Let that sink in. Staying silent doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It means you're done letting that pain define your actions. It means you're choosing dignity over drama, maturity over mess. You don't need a dramatic exit to make a point. You don't need to slam doors. You simply stop showing up where you're not valued, and you let the silence speak on your behalf. Not to prove anything to them, but to prove everything to yourself. There's a difference between moving on and leaving the door half open. A lot of people say they're done with someone, but they still keep the emotional thread alive. They stay connected through social media. They keep old messages. They respond to just checking in. Texts at midnight. It feels harmless at first. You tell yourself, we're still on good terms, or I don't want to be petty, or even maybe he'll come back when he's ready. But deep down, you know those lingering ties are slowing your healing. You're not moving on, you're just stalling the goodbye. Unfollow, unfriend, untangle. It's not about being bitter or vengeful. It's about taking a real step toward emotional freedom. When someone has proven they don't know how to love you in the way you need to be loved, it's not your job to leave breadcrumbs back to you. Blocking someone isn't immature when it's done with clarity. In fact, it's one of the most mature things you can do when your peace is on the line. You're not doing it to punish them. You're doing it to protect yourself from the temptation of revisiting something that hurt you. Every time you check his Instagram, every time you leave his number in your phone, every time you let him view your stories, you're keeping a thread of hope alive, often without realizing it. It's like keeping a door unlocked that you know you should have closed, not because you want him to walk through it again, but because a small part of you is afraid to accept that he won't. But the truth is, healing begins when you stop negotiating with your past, when you stop leaving openings for people who already walked away. And if you think cutting him off is too extreme, ask yourself this: has being accessible to him brought you peace, or has it kept you stuck? Has it helped you feel closure, or has it kept you replaying every little interaction? You're not weak for still caring, but you are responsible for what you do with that care. You can feel everything and still choose to let go. The idea that you have to remain available to prove you're over someone is backwards. Real strength is in removing access. Real growth is in learning that not everyone who once mattered deserves a lifelong backstage pass to your life. Some people will say, "But I don't want to seem dramatic." Ask yourself, why is preserving his comfort still your concern? You're the one who's been carrying the emotional weight. You're the one who's been hoping for something more. If someone no longer brings safety, clarity, or respect into your life, you owe it to yourself to draw a line. And drawing that line doesn't need to come with a dramatic speech or a final confrontation. It can be quiet, clean, direct. You unfollow, you delete the number, you stop checking, you stop waiting. This is the unglamorous part of moving on that no one talks about. It's not always a cinematic moment. Sometimes it's you sitting on your bed, deleting his contact, even though your hands shake. Sometimes it's hitting block, not because you hate him, but because you love yourself enough to stop reliving pain on a loop. You're allowed to choose peace over confusion. You're allowed to make your healing inconvenient for someone who didn't think twice about hurting you. It doesn't mean you never loved him. It doesn't mean what you had wasn't real. It just means you've outgrown the version of yourself who kept hoping he'd change. And maybe one day he'll notice you're gone, he'll search for your name, he'll wonder why he can't see your updates anymore. And maybe he'll feel that regret, but by then it won't matter, because you'll already be too far gone to care. There's something incredibly powerful about evolving in silence, about choosing to better yourself, not to make someone miss you, not to prove a point, but simply because you deserve more. When you've been hurt or dismissed, there's a natural urge to seek validation through transformation. You think, "I'll level up and then he'll see what he lost." But here's the truth: the most powerful kind of growth is the kind that isn't driven by revenge. It's driven by a deep, unshakable commitment to yourself. When you level up without needing him to see it, that's when your glow becomes untouchable. People often mistake healing for performance. They go to the gym obsessively just to post stories they hope he'll see. They wear new outfits, show up at places they know he might be, or carefully craft their captions with just enough edge to stir curiosity. And sure, it might spark a reaction, he might notice, he might even reach out, but when your growth is designed to get a response, it's not real growth. It's just another form of dependency. It means he still has power over you, even in his absence. You don't truly move on when you're still curating your life for someone else's attention. The real shift happens when you stop caring whether he's watching at all. When your motivation for becoming stronger, happier, healthier, more fulfilled comes from within, not from a need to be seen, but from a desire to feel whole again. That's when the glow-up becomes real, not because it's aesthetic, but because it's rooted in something solid, something lasting. You start reading more, not to look intellectual, but because it feeds your mind. You start dressing better, not to turn heads, but because it makes you feel confident. You start saying no more often, not to seem cold, but because your time and energy are finally sacred. And in that process, something shifts. You begin to see that your life doesn't revolve around being chosen anymore. It revolves around choosing yourself. Every day you show up for yourself in small, consistent ways, cooking a healthy meal, going for that walk, finally starting that project, letting go of things that no longer serve you. You're sending a message to your future self. I am worth showing up for. That message becomes louder than any "I miss you" you might still secretly hope to hear. Ironically, that's usually when the people who once ignored you begin to take notice, not because you chased them, but because you finally stopped. Your absence becomes more noticeable than your presence ever was. You're no longer on call. You're no longer orbiting around his world. You've become the center of your own, and from that place you attract differently, not just new relationships, but new energy. You stop accepting crumbs because you've remembered how to feed yourself. You stop settling for half-effort love because your own effort, your own growth, is enough to remind you of your worth. And if he does come back, if he reaches out after seeing how far you've come, you'll know the difference between someone who truly values you and someone who just misses the version of you that once waited around. You won't be flattered, you'll be clear, because your journey won't be about showing him what he lost. It'll be about finally embracing everything you've gained. You didn't evolve for him to see it, you evolved because you were finally ready to see it yourself. Trying to make someone regret losing you often comes from a place of pain. You want them to feel what you felt, the abandonment, the confusion, the hollow silence after they left. It's a human reaction, that desire to be missed, to be realized as irreplaceable. But when you make your healing about proving a point, you stay emotionally tied to the very person who made you feel small. The truth is, real regret isn't something you can force in someone else. It happens when they're met with the quiet realization that the version of you they once had no longer exists. The irony is, you don't make someone regret losing you by screaming your worth. You don't do it by constantly posting quotes, hinting at how happy you are now, or trying to force visibility into your new life. You do it by truly moving on. You do it by evolving so completely that you become unrecognizable, not physically, necessarily, but energetically. You stop engaging, you stop responding, you stop participating in the dynamic where they were once the center of your emotional universe. And that silence, that indifference, becomes the echo they hear when they wonder why your name no longer lights up on their phone. They remember how easily they used to access you, how you'd always reply, always pick up, always hold space for them even when they didn't deserve it. And then one day you don't. That's when the shift happens, because regret is born not from someone seeing your pain, but from them seeing your power. When you no longer need them to understand, explain, apologize, or chase you back, you reclaim the emotional power they once held. You don't have to act cold. You don't have to pretend to be over it when you're not. You just have to choose every day to stop giving them emotional oxygen. That means resisting the urge to show them what they're missing and instead living so fully that their opinion becomes irrelevant. They don't regret losing someone who was always available. They regret losing someone who, without warning, stopped waiting. Someone who stopped showing up to prove their worth and simply decided to know it. Regret doesn't come because you tried harder or said the perfect thing. It comes when your absence teaches them what your presence never could, and if it doesn't, that's still not your problem. You don't heal to create regret in someone else. You heal because dragging your identity through the dirt for another person's approval is exhausting. You heal because you deserve to be free from the weight of someone who couldn't see you clearly the first time. That kind of freedom is louder than any message you could ever send. It speaks for you. There's something unshakably attractive about someone who doesn't try to prove they've moved on. They just have. They're not broadcasting it. They're not performing happiness. They're simply living in a way that's no longer anchored in the past. That's what hits hardest, when they realize you no longer care whether they regret it or not. That's when they do. Not because you made them feel bad, but because you became someone they no longer have access to. So stop trying to craft the perfect exit that'll leave them haunted. Just go quietly, strongly, without looking back. Let them deal with the silence. Let them process the change. And whether or not they ever say it out loud, they'll feel it. They'll feel the loss of someone who once gave everything and now gives nothing. Not from bitterness, but from growth, from clarity, from finally realizing that being unforgettable has nothing to do with being seen and everything to do with finally walking away. The real power move in walking away from someone who didn't value you isn't in making them regret losing you. It's in reaching a place where you no longer want them at all. That might sound simple, but it's actually one of the hardest shifts to make. It's the moment you stop chasing validation, stop holding onto memories that hurt, and stop hoping for a chance that was never really yours to begin with. When you get to that place, the dynamic flips entirely. You become the one who's lost nothing because you've gained everything: your peace, your self-respect, your freedom. Most people don't realize that continuing to want someone who walked away is actually giving them control long after they're gone. As long as you hold on to that desire, they have power over your emotions. They dictate your mood, your thoughts, and sometimes even your self-worth. It's like being trapped in a loop where you replay old scenes, hoping for a different ending. But the moment you stop wanting him, the loop breaks. You finally see that you're not missing him, you're missing the idea of what could have been, and that idea no longer has a hold on you. This isn't about bitterness or resentment. It's about clarity and growth. It's about realizing that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else's choices. When you reach this point, you no longer measure your worth by his approval or attention. You don't check your phone hoping for a message. You don't replay conversations wondering what went wrong. Instead, you focus on building a life that feels full and authentic to you, regardless of whether he's a part of it or not. The power in not wanting him anymore is that it removes the emotional fuel that keeps you stuck. It means you're no longer defined by loss or longing. You become whole on your own terms, and when you're whole, you radiate a confidence and peace that's impossible to fake. That kind of energy is magnetic, and it draws the right people and opportunities into your life naturally. But it also serves as a powerful boundary. If he tries to come back, you'll be ready to see him clearly, not through the lens of need or desperation. Another important part of this transformation is understanding that wanting someone back after they hurt you only prolongs your healing. It's like trying to build a house on shaky foundations. No matter how much you decorate or renovate, the structure won't be stable. When you finally let go of wanting him, you start building on solid ground, your own values, your own goals, your own self-love. That's when true healing begins. It's messy and sometimes scary, but it's also liberating. You might feel moments of doubt or loneliness, and that's normal. Breaking emotional ties doesn't happen overnight, but each time you choose yourself over him, you strengthen your boundaries and your sense of self. You learn to find comfort in your own company and confidence in your own decisions. Eventually, the urge to want him back fades, replaced by a quiet but unshakable knowing that you deserve better, and that better starts with you. And here's the ultimate truth: you were never the one who lost. Losing someone who didn't see your worth isn't a loss, it's a gain. It's the space you needed to grow, to rediscover yourself, and to open up to love that actually matches your value. The final power move is not about proving anything to him or anyone else. It's about proving to yourself that you are enough, all on your own. When you reach that place, you hold all the cards, and nothing feels more victorious than that. To wrap this up, remember, erasing him isn't about erasing your past or pretending the pain never existed. It's about reclaiming your power, choosing yourself over waiting, and stepping into a future where you're no longer defined by someone who didn't see your worth. When you walk away quietly but confidently, when you grow without needing validation, and when you stop wanting what wasn't meant for you, you don't just make him regret losing you, you transform your entire life, and that, more than anything, is the real victory. So go ahead, erase him like he never existed, not out of anger, but out of love for the person you're becoming. Because the best revenge is living well, and the best future is the one you create for yourself.